So you'll give me a heads up when it starts.
Okay, yeah, it started now. I've let everybody in. So thank you everyone for being here. Um, we have Musmi Panda, who is a senior associate at the Apti Institute, and you're the first person today that's going to talk about scams. Actually, this is interesting. I noticed that last year as well. There wasn't many talk about scams, although it's probably one of the more places that touches the most people. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate this topic. I'm very much looking forward to your talk. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angeline, for giving the opportunity. And for all the participants who have joined, I'm very excited for this talk. And before we get into the talk, I would just like to tell a little bit about APTI. So, we are a tech policy organization based in Bangalore, and we study technology at the intersection of society. Some of the areas that we work includes AI, digital public infrastructure, labor, platform economies, and also about online safety in the context of information integrity. And recently, we have also been working on digital financial fraud and also sometimes known as scams. So I'm very excited to be here. And the way that we work at IAPTI is that we do interdisciplinary research. And over the last half year, we have been engaged in the question of understanding how can we solve for digital financial fraud in a better way. And most of our research has been based in India, but a lot of the findings and sharing today, I hope, will also be applicable to people who are watching this and listening to it from different jurisdictions. So I'm really excited about that. So I'll just put up my PowerPoint presentation. Um, yeah. So I hope you're able to see my screen. Yeah. So the talk for today is how do we actually close the loop on scam, and the way that we can do is what is the approach that we can take. A lot of the times when we have tried to understand scam or digital financial fraud, it has always been very much focused on the people or the policy, but one of the key element that has been missed in our understanding or what we realize from our research is the product. Like a lot of the times when we are on the digital environment, product is often the central on which the communication and the engagement is happening. And that is why we thought that this would be an appropriate way to also understand how can we prevent scams and how can we take some actionable steps. Now, before I go into the deeper part of the discussion today, I would just like to also share about some personal anecdote when I started to work on fraud. This was just some time back when I was just on the marketplace and trying to sell a personal piece of furniture. And the moment I was on the platform, there were interactions about, okay, how do we actually exchange numbers? How do we actually get into the payment platform? What are the platform through which we can actually sell and do the transaction? How do we actually share our numbers? And all those questions around how early can I sell the product. So it was a lot overwhelming receiving all the information, but also at the same time knowing that the marketplaces are also known for a lot of scams. And as soon as the conversation happens and as soon as the engagement happens, as like millions of people do online, there was a pop-up message about how I have to be aware of certain scams on the platform, and I have to be aware about certain payment platforms. And there were certain, when I actually clicked on the learn more, I got to know there are certain platforms that they had flagged, for example Venmo and Zelle. And therefore I really had to be always on the guard about how I'm transacting, how I'm speaking with the person, or what kind of information I'm sharing, and hopefully I'm not falling for a potential scam. So that got me actually thinking about how safe is actually our online world, right? And I think this is the question that we will be dealing with over the course of this conference. But this is not just a personal question, but also not a personal experience, but also as a researcher, something that we have been grappling with. And I think the moment that now I am on digital platform, I started thinking about, okay, as a user, as a person who is on digital platform, be it a communication platform or payment platform, what are some of the available tools to prevent users like me to fall for scam. scams? Are there any visual cues? Are there any digital safety features? And how can platform be designed in a manner that we can think of some design features which can actually prevent scam and not always burden the user to always be on high alert and be aware about what's happening online? So this is what brought us to our study, and we started to understand what does the relationship between digital financial fraud and products could look like. And increasingly, without getting into much data and facts and figure, we started realizing that there is a very clear relationship between trust and digital products. And there are studies which actually talk about how fear of being scammed is one of the top global barriers of to trust in digital payments. So a lot of the people, including 46% of the people who were part of the study, who highlighted that scams are often perceived as higher risk now as compared to data breaches and hacking. And the fraudsters, they're getting smarter. The process is getting very iterative, in the sense that when they discover some tactic, and people, we start with some kind of awareness, they move on to some different kind of tactics, and they move to different kind of platforms. So how can we actually think beyond just awareness, right? And we also started to realize that they're exploiting trust as a cue, trust as a currency. It could be any kind of familiar brand, it could be any kind of familiar voice, or they're talking about your personal detail. Maybe it could be, let's say, your contact number. It could be about any personal piece of information that they have to confuse you and actually deceive you of the money. Now, this brings me to the framework. We have, as I told, that we have been trying to understand this from a not just from a policy or a people perspective. We actually wanted to, hit the bull eye and just wanted to understand what is actually at the core of this. And we realized that awareness is not always going to help, right? Because when we talk about people, there's not only sometimes lack of awareness or lack of tool, but also a lot of the times the platform themselves, they are not invested in actually building that trust on the platform. Maybe the design features are not there, or they are there in a way that they are built for engagement. A lot of the time, when we exist in the digital ecosystem, it's high on engagement, it's high on growth metrics for the platform. But a lot of the times there is no focus on how can you can protect the people, you can prevent the scam by actually working at the core of this. And when it comes to the policy, a lot of the time, especially when we're trying to look at the policy landscape in India and a little bit of outside Indian jurisdiction, realize that there are a lot of like lag in terms of how policy is keeping up. Yes, in the recent few years, there has been some kind of development, and I'll talk more about it in the next few slides. But also, a lot of the time, it lags in the sense that there will be some general directions around how there should be, the platform should be working on user awareness, there should be content moderation, but the policy sometimes lack understanding around the tactics which are employed, and how can we build user awareness in a way which does not put the burden on them. How can we think about building products which are safer, or how can the policies be baked in where they are thinking about the technical architecture, as well as thinking about the incentives of the people who are involved, right? And how can we actually tie all of these three things together to prevent scam? So our takeaway has been that a lot of the times we see the scams slip through because of these fragmentation within these three circles. So a lot of the times there are cracks in user knowledge, there is cracks in the robustness of the product and policy affinity. And when all of these three things come together, or some of the combination these things come together, it's very difficult to prevent scams with just one approach. Now this brings us to a very important part of the discussions, that even though users cannot always be blamed for what's happening, and we cannot always work on the user awareness, but the fact of the matter is, from the research that we have done, and also from the prior research that we have seen, and from the literature review, a lot of the times there are emotions at play, a lot of the time there is some cognitive thinking at play, and these are some of the vulnerabilities among the user which are exploited by the fraud perpetrator. Somebody who has been, let's say, going through some age related or health related impairment, or maybe the person is not technologically literate enough that they know about how they can enable some of the safety tools, whether it's the payment app or the communication app. A lot of the time there is also fear and anxiety under which they are operating. For example, if somebody calls you and tell you and put you under duress, saying that your loved one is under arrest for some kind of crime, or they have been injured and basically some kind of money is needed to take care of them, or maybe like do away with the matter. And a lot of the times there's also not of familiarity with the scam trend. So while you may be aware with a few of the scams which might be very common, a lot of the times the scam trends are very much evolving. So it's always like a game of chase where the person has to keep on following what's the latest scam in town, and how can I prevent myself from it. People are also operating under financial insecurity. So somebody who had, let's say, a loss of job, they are also thinking about how can they make themselves financially secure. So when somebody is offering you a remote job and about doing some paid tasks without thinking, people sometimes, because they are under the urgency of earning money, they have bills to pay, they are operating under financial insecurity. And in today's digital world, isolation and loneliness also play a very big role. So a lot of the times we see these kind of emotions play out in romance scam as well. Now, when it comes to the cognitive vulnerability, a lot of the times the thinking pattern of humans are also misused in a way by the fraudsters to get them into taking certain decision. For example, optimism bias. Nothing bad can happen to me. I am taking these steps, or scams can never happen to me. I am smart enough. Stranger trust bias. A stranger reaches out to me telling that they know my sister, they know my family, or I trust them based on that trust cue that okay, they are known to my loved ones. There's authority bias. People calling and telling that they are calling from, let's say, payment regulator, or they are law enforcement. There's also a lot of the time other kind of biases in play, not going into much detail, but confirmation bias, reciprocity bias. Okay, the other person has already make an effort to call me, so I have to like make an effort, download this app, try to know what they are saying. I have to follow what they are saying, or maybe like try to get to know what the promotion or the offer is. I have to respect their time. And when it comes to confirmation bias, they already have a piece of information. They know my name, they know my contact, probably they know my named one. So I'm relying on that first piece of information, and and it's confirmed that okay, the person has my details, so probably whatever they are gonna say next is also true. So we see all of these emotions at play, and a lot of the times these are exploited by the fraudster when they're trying to actually target people for scams. Now, there are also certain vulnerabilities within the product itself. And what we try to do is that by taking some of the examples of the payment and communication app, these are some of the things that we often observed in the data that we were working with, that what are some of the product vulnerabilities which are exploited by people. So when it comes to any kind of account registration, whether you are on let's say Instagram or Facebook, a lot of the times there are a lot of channels which are probably trying to reach out, or they are trying to sell a product, they are trying to give certain piece of information about any kind of investment offer. So how do we actually understand that it's an official channel or not? There are certain platforms which has, let's say, a blue tick feature, but a lot of the times these ads which we see on the platform can also be unverified, and there might not be a very strong policy behind having this business ad properly vetted before they're put online, because it benefits the platform. And when it comes to, let's say, different accounts, sometimes the account credentials can be changed and it's just an OTP away. If I probably want to change my password, sometimes on a platform, okay, I just need to put an OTP, or if I want to reflect any kind of change, there are not a lot of multiple authentication layers which can help bridge that gap. Similarly, when it comes to communication, a lot of the time the privacy tools, even when they are provided in the application, they are not like on by default. It's something the user has to be aware, and they have to enable it themselves. A lot of the time there is authenticity gap. If somebody is trying to reach out to me and telling me that they are from law enforcement, or they're calling, let's say, from RBI, how do I actually understand that the person is actually what they are claiming to be? How do I verify their identity? How authentic is the communication? And we also see that when it comes to a lot of platform, the communication is often frictionless, which means that people can actually approach without being much friction. If somebody has a number of yours and you're on WhatsApp, it's easier for the person to actually message you. How do we actually make sure that these platforms are built in a way that there is sometimes enough friction for people to safeguard themselves? And when it comes to transaction, a lot of the app, because of the boom in the digital, financial transaction online, especially after the COVID-19, people are actually exploring a lot with digital financial products, and some of these might also be not very regulated, and in the name of providing a lot of frictionless payment, a lot of the times maybe the pay details are not clear in the design feature. They are just providing you basic like ID, and I will show some practical examples of in the next few slides. And there are certain platforms which does not have a very much friction built in when you are trying to do a high value transaction. So when I'm trying to, maybe let's say, make a payment through UPI, the limit is increased drastically, not just from a few hundreds or thousand, but to lakhs, which means that when there is unrestricted high value transaction, the scope for the amount of money that can be defrauded also increases when it comes to transactions. Now, if I had to give you a practical example of how this played out while we were trying to look at the primary data that we had when it come to people, product, and policy, is that we realized that when people actually see the message regarding investment, somebody saw a message which read that they can earn 200% return in a week, and then they said that's why they clicked the link. So they are operating under some kind of financial, incentive that they are thinking about. And then when they actually joined the group, they actually saw that there are several person on the platform in that group who are representing themselves as an employee of a particular investment firm called Vanguard with DNP Capital. So there is actually a, trust biased. There is actually, a bandwagon wise, because you're also seeing a lot of people in that group. So you probably assume that, okay, other people are making money, I can also make money and probably earn a handsome, return in a very short period of time. So when it comes to product, right, whenever they are being redirected from one platform to another, is there enough friction, or are they being told when they are joining an investment group or what the group is actually about, or are they are actually directly taken to the link, and it's very easy for them to be, taken from one kind of communication application and to be taken to another, where the governance might not be, or the policy, or maybe the safety features might not be that strong, right? And then when they actually receive a link on the platform, they are being told to download a certain kind of application and to invest the money in it, right? So does the product, which might be your Android or it could be your iOS device, it allows you to download certain harmful files. So these are some of the product level features which might not be there, or be there, which can prevent or not prevent a person from scam. When it comes to policy regulation, a lot of the times we obviously vary a lot when it comes to different jurisdiction. So it could be, let's say, a very lax verification when it comes to business account. There's proliferation of a lot of business accounts on certain communication platform, and also putting up of ads on platforms such as Instagram, right? So just because somebody has a business account, that does not mean that the person is authentic in their communication, that there cannot be any fraud related to them. And when people are actually trying to invest online, a lot of the times when there is mushrooming of digital platforms, every other bank or every other platform is trying to sell some kind of investment application. How, as a user, I can know that there is a whitelist of platforms or applications which I can actually use to invest? These are some things which are actually regulated by the payment regulator or the banks, and these are safe for me to interact with as somebody who's looking to invest. So a lot of the times these policy gaps are there. So this was a practical example of how this could play out while you are dealing with a specific case of fraud. Now, it brings me to the question, how do we actually close the loop on scams then? So, starting with the policy, as I have talked about how policy is important and definitely plays a bigger role in this, even though there is a lot of time, a lot of focus on the policy, but that doesn't mean that it has no role to play in the prevention of scam. And we will see that there are certain jurisdictions who are thinking of the ways in which they can actually prevent the scam. So, when we think about different regulators, they have an important role to play. So, for example, when it comes to UK, they're thinking about how they can provide 100% reimbursement to victims. So, when it comes to authorized push payment, how can they make the reimbursement policy stronger so that it acts probably as an incentive? And some may also disagree and call it a disincentive for the bank to actually think about how can they make their safety protocols even more stronger? How can they make the digital products even stronger, so that there is a lot more responsibility on them, and they have to think that they have to now reimburse the victims, and they cannot shrug their hands off and say that we have nothing to do with it, you were unaware, you made the payment, and that's not something that we can help you with. So this is an example of one kind of a policy. Another could be thinking about how you can actually prevent scams through some kind of prevention mechanism. So when it comes to Australia, thinking about some sector specific obligations, how they can think about probably different sectors, for example, telecommunication, payment, communications, and social media platform, e-commerce, and how it can be a very shared responsibility, in the sense that each one of the sectors in the digital ecosystem has a role to play in preventing scam. Now, when it comes to European Union, it has been thinking on somewhat similar line, that how they can think about some kind of anti-fraud framework. So, working on a system which is fraud resistant, which is transparent, and how the payments can be made safe. So, in each of the jurisdiction, these are some of the policies which are shaping or have shaped up, and it will be some time before we see how effective these has been in the prevention of scam. But these are some very specific legislations, examples of some policies which we have seen, which are targeted towards scam. And a lot of the other jurisdictions, they're still working on a very bare minimum legislation where we do not have anything specific targeting scams, or let's say talking about preventing scams or making the digital ecosystem more robust. Now, just giving you some India examples. So, as I was talking about different sectors, for example, the payment and the communication, and since our study was based out of a lot of Indian data and the focus was India, there were a lot of sectors that we were able to understand. We were trying to understand that where there are certain regulations in play and what could be done, so that it could be in the form of some kind of guidelines, it could be in the form of certain circulator. For example, the RBI, it issued a circulator way back in 2017, which talked about how the customer liability can be limited when it comes to electronic fraud, which means that the other payment sectors, they have to think about sharing some of that liability, and how they cannot always put everything on the customer to be aware of, or in case some kind of fraud happens. Then, when it comes to the National Payment Corporation, there are also certain guidelines which is passed. For example, if the platforms, they do not have uniform reporting procedure, or they do not have any good way of reporting mechanism when it comes to fraud, then what could be some of the liability on them in terms of fine, in terms of any action under the intermediary guidelines, right? So this was about the payment sector. Now, coming to the communication sector, what we realized in our primary data, that a lot of these scams were operating at industrial scale, in the sense that they were operating out of call centers. And these were unauthorized call center. A lot of time they did not even have license to operate, and they were not only operating within India and trying to scam people based out of the jurisdiction, but also outside the Indian jurisdiction. So how can we actually think about certain guidelines which kind of puts a seal and makes it very difficult to operate these call centers without any kind of proper licensing? And then coming to the telecom regulator, so they have also been thinking a lot about how can we look at this from the point of view of the customers. So when it comes to, let's say, the customers, how can they actually think about what kind of communication can be passed on to them? If they have DND, a do not disturb kind of a service on, how certain kind of communication cannot be pushed by telemarketers in the name of promotions, how now the communication has to be registered, so it cannot be any kind of unauthorized communication that can come to the people. So how can they make the communication sector more robust? Now, coming to my favorite part, which is talking about the design safety around products. So there are also certain jurisdictions which are thinking about some of the technical architecture of the product itself. So they are being called by different names. Somewhere it's safety by design principle or secure by design principle. So thinking about how can, when we are building the product and services, these kind of safety guidelines, these kind of safety features are actually baked into the product before even thinking about any kind of post facto scam prevention, so that we can make the digital payment sector, or we can make any kind of digital product and services very strong from the very foundation, from its design to governance. So when it comes to people, so what works for people and what doesn't has been really important for us. So even though we realize that user awareness is not the only way in which we can solve this problem, but we have noticed that there are certain ways in which can make these awareness very more specific over generalized messaging, and how can the communication services can actually help in a way to make people aware in a way that, not putting too much burden on them to verify the communication, but also robust enough to understand what kind of messaging they are receiving. For example, we have seen a lot of the times that what scamsters were doing, that they were sharing, let's say, a forwarded message. So if I receive a forwarded message saying that somebody has deposited this amount of money from my account, or this much money has been charged for something like this, call this number for customer support. How do I actually know that it's a genuine transaction? A lot of the times, for example, if I'm in the busy schedule, or maybe I'm on a call and I receive a message, a lot of the times people are not able to identify those visual cues, that whether it's been forwarded, or whether, it's a screenshot of the payment that they're receiving, let's say on WhatsApp or any kind of communication. So how do we actually make all of these authentic communications stand out? So this is something that Try has been recently started, which is an SMS suffix system. So if you see behind every message, there is a ending word. So T is for the transaction, S is for the service, and G for the government. So whenever you're doing any kind of transaction and receiving an OTP, whether it's related to any kind of, let's say, movie ticket I'm trying to book, whether I'm trying to pay rent, or whether what kind of transaction I'm doing, I'll be able to identify that it's a valid, authentic transaction. When it comes to a service, if I'm trying to log into my account and if I need an OTP for that, I'll know that, okay, this is for a specific login that I need, and this is not somebody trying to, use the OTP for something else, right? And whenever I'm receiving, for example, some kind of communication from the government, how can I know that, okay, if I file my ITR, or if I have paid my taxes, or if it is a communication related to the government, it's indeed the government which is messaging me, and these are not being routed through scamsters to, get me into the mode of fear or anxiety or any kind of authority, bias into giving in and sharing personal detail, right? So now, coming to how basically, just to give an example of how authority anxiety and some of the biases around, authority biases, they can solve with targeted messaging. So in some of the jurisdiction, including India, digital arrest has been one of the popular scams, which means that somebody who is trying to, behave as a cop or identify as a cop, they will be calling and telling that, okay, you are being put under digital arrest. Now, in such case, if somebody is fearful of the authority, which most people, unfortunately, in a law enforced society are, they will try to comply with the request without thinking much about the authenticity of the communication. So, how can we actually solve for that? If somebody is basically calling me for an international number and I do not know whether this communication is genuine or not, how can I actually, report this kind of communication if somebody is trying to call me from an international number or trying to scam me? Or if, let's say, somebody's trying to reach out to me and tell that, okay, they need to install some kind of mobile tower inside my building compound, and they're producing a fake letter. So these kind of government communication by the Department of Telecommunication and Telecom Regulatory Authority has also been useful, because they are being targeted awareness messaging for the people that can solve for some of these kind of user vulnerabilities. Now, coming to some of the other emotional cognitive vulnerabilities, for example, the case study that I was talking about earlier in the framework about investment apps, right? So, what are some of the channels which can be used to discover legitimate products? So, the guidelines by the RBI around having some kind of repository which can actually help people to discover the apps which have been approved by it, or which are actually genuine apps. So there should be some kind of official verifiable channel where people can actually identify whether those products are legitimate or not. So how can we actually solve that by, reducing the information asymmetry? So these were some of the examples how a people level, targeting of messaging awareness and policies can actually help people take more informed decision, but also not put the whole burden on them. Now, when it comes to the product, right, and this is one of the core element of the study that we had been working on, and with this, I will try to kind of give you some practical examples of how, when we were trying to understand two different products, that what are some of the digital tools that we identified which could be helpful in trying to, solve for some of these fraud. So this is a very popular communication app, and which you can see, which is WhatsApp. And we try to understand what are some of the recent digital, safety features which have been used. And the reason that we chose WhatsApp is because we realized in our data, the data that we had, it was one of the popular applications which is in use in India, and also sometime a lot of the times used by the scamsters to kind of start the initial kind of engagement. So how can we actually stay safe in these kind of environment, by understanding what are the digital safety features and tools which are being built? For example, if somebody is trying to add you to the group, how can you actually stay safe in a group? By having certain kind of tools which you can look at. So even when you're trying to add yourself, like somebody is trying to add you to the group, there are privacy feature which will basically prevent yourself from automatically adding you. Yes, those are some of the features that people have to kind of safely enable for themselves, but it's very important that those safety features are actually there. And also a lot of times that people demand that they should be open by default, which means that people's safety should not come at the cost of engagement, or at the cost of platform incentive of engagement, right? And for example, if somebody is trying to add you to a group, or maybe trying to contact where you do not have anything in common, there's not a common contact, there's no common group, does it raise like hesitancy for a second to think about whether interacting with the person? Because that person can say, hey, I'm Anna from your college, but there's no Anna from the college that you remember, there's no common group that you're part of, or there's no common contact which is there. So some of these messaging which tells you, okay, the person is not in your contact, they're not part of the common group, and then you can see there are certain kind of safety tools which are there, and you can try to explore it, and understand how you can basically enable them for yourself. Now, checking for blue check marks. So, and this is something that I have realized that even while receiving some kind of communication over WhatsApp, a lot of the times the business channels, they are not verified. They will be referring themselves as digital financial service or Jasper's Market, or some kind of baking club. But how do we actually know whether this is a legitimate platform or not? So how can we actually look at some of the visual clues which could be, let's say, the blue check mark to chat confidently with the business provider, with the service provider? Now these are some of the visual clues when it comes to the communication app. Give me a second, my screen seemed to be stuck. I'll just uh share, start the presentation again.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
not sure if you noticed, but we are past the time. So
Okay, so I'll just quickly kind of close with the fact that when it comes to even payments, there are also certain digital, privacy tools which are being added, and probably I can also share this PPT with people who are interested to, read more about this. So I think just coming towards the end of the talk for today is that we need to understand that how we can read some of the human behavior insight, and how we can actually use them for, redesigning some of the products, and how those products can be designed in a way that they inform some kind of regulatory standards. And the policy focus can actually reshape incentives not only just for the product but also for the people, and how bringing all of these three approaches together can also be very helpful in scam prevention. So this is for today, and thank you so much for the opportunity to Shield, for letting me part of this conference. And you can find us at apti.in, and you can reach out to us at contact@apti.in. I'll be more than happy to talk more about scams and fraud and get to know what do you think about this topic, and we have anything to common, to share in terms of how we can take this forward and think about better preventions. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
thank you as well. It was really very interesting. This holistic view is not, I haven't seen that very often, and it's very important. So I'm looking forward to getting that heard a little bit more, putting that, using the INTA frameworks in practice and how we actually help people. So thank you very much. We'll definitely be in touch soon.
Thank you so much, Anjali.
Thank you.